this. Let's go back to the conversation we were having earlier regarding fundamentals and what.
Yeah. So again, when we look at the term matchups, which is a really complex thing. So I remember asking a long time back with George, I'm like, well, how would you define a matchup? And it was really funny because we both understood what a matchup was, but we couldn't like put a definition on it other than like, oh, we're trying to make everything work together. But to accomplish what? What are we trying to put together and what's the target we're aiming at other than we just have a series of movements working together, right? Because that's basically what a swing model is. Whether you're going to go steep or you're going to be shallow, you're more of a closed face player or an open face player, whether you're more stack and tilt or you're a player who moves more off. There's a lot of different models you could have your golf swing. And if matched up correctly, they can all work, right? Um, Now you could argue some are going to work more easily than others or whatever, but they can all potentially work, at least theoretically on paper, the math you're trying to work out. But what is the math you're trying to work out? And to me, that's where the fundamentals come in play. So again, I kind of asked this question to all instructors that I run into. I asked them, what do you think the fundamentals are? Because if I think of other sports like basketball, because I've heard it a lot in that sport in particular, people will say, oh yeah, you got the fundamentals of basketball. You'll hear Kobe talk about it or Michael Jordan or whoever you listen to. I'm like, okay, they get raised with fundamentals in that sport. But I've never heard of fundamentals in golf. I never got told, oh, this is what is important in golf and this is too, and this is not good in golf. People will throw out their theories, or I'll hear people throw on videos saying, get your arm in this position in the golf swing, but they'll never give you context as to why you want to do that or if it should even apply to you. So I started asking that question. I got answers all across the board. The most common answer I get when people say fundamentals is going to be, oh, it's your grip because it's what's holding the club. It's your alignment because that's where you're aimed. You got to be aimed towards the target. Oh, it's your posture at address. Oh, it's how you're rotating during the swing, which are all important things. Those things are all going to affect the fundamentals. But to me, they aren't the actual fundamentals themselves because you can look across the spectrum of great players, whether you want to go Hall of Fame, on tour, players who can break par, however you want to define it. And there's going to be exceptions to every single rule. I don't like exceptions to the rule. I want something to be truthful. I want it to be pretty rock solid, or at least as rock solid as we can possibly get. So if you look at like grip, for example, well, who could have a stronger grip and a more bowed wrist than somebody like Lee Trevino, right? Dead shot. But he would aim way left. He would drop an airplane and hit giant shoves out there to try and make it work.
Right.
Obviously, there's a lot of great players with a weak grip. Colin Morikawa comes to mind, Matt Wolff. You could go way down history and go different
Basically,
examples. And then obviously yes, very much so. And then you could obviously go neutral. That's always going to be kind of the bulkier people, right? So if
yeah.
you're going on each end of the spectrum, and that's not even looking at grip preference, right? Jim Furyk with double overlap, single overlap, interlock, 10 finger. Like there's so many examples of where it can go different. It's like, well, these things aren't universal truths, which is the definition I would look at when I'm talking about fundamental. A fundamental should be something that applies to everybody. The beginner, Tiger Woods in his prime, or the intermediate. If they can do these skills better, they're going to become better at golf. And if they do them worse, they're going to become worse at golf, which I think is a fair definition of the word fundamental. So when I think of fundamentals, and you were actually kind of describing what Stack and Tilt talks about, which I think their definition of fundamentals is the closest I've ever heard. So kudos to them. It's our low point, aka are we able to control where this club and ball are interacting with each other? When the ball is sitting on the ground, can we make ball first contact and then interact with the ground? And ideally, can we get underneath the golf ball completely? Because we don't want to thin it or top it. So can we make flush contact? And can we do it on a consistent basis? Second would be our face. Can we control where our face is aimed left and right? Because we need the ball to start on our intended line or at least close. And can we control our dynamic loft? How much the club is angled up or forward when we're hitting it to help control our distance? Then we have our face to pattern. First, can we get it in the proper direction relative to our face so it curves the way we intend, and then having it the right ratio so it's curving the proper amount. We're not hooking one or pushing one way out to the right if we're hitting a draw or vice versa for a fade. Fourth would be our contact on the face. Are we hitting the ball ideally in the middle of the face, or if we want to go down Chad's road, which I would argue the Tiger strike, but most importantly, are we hitting it on a consistent part of the club face for two reasons? If we don't hit the middle of the club face, or if we hit in a different part of the club face, our ball speed changes because our smash factor changes.
Yes.
So we need to control our distance. So we're not hitting the same part of the face, which again, ideally is the middle of the face. We're going to hit different distances. And that's a problem because we need to not throw one over the back of the green or come up short. And then if we introduce hybrids and we introduce woods and driver because of the design of them, well, gear effect becomes massively important with those clubs. Because if we hit one high and off the toe, a snap hook happens very quickly. And if we hit one low and off the heel, we might keep it in play off the tee, but we're going to lose a tremendous amount of distance. Hitting near the middle of the face and most importantly, consistently on the face gives us the same direction and the same distance. So that's important. And lastly is speed, the ability to create speed and the ability to control our speed, which to me is the more important of the two. Creating speed is always going to be important. It's always going to be an advantage, but we need to control how far that ball goes. As you were telling me before this interview, play the proper tees. Go play the 150 marker if you have to. If you can scale the tees you're playing, you can kind of mitigate how much speed you create a little bit. Controlling our speed is very important because, again, we don't want to blow one over the back and come up short in the water when we're misjudging something or mishitting it. Oh, another way of saying that is if you were to define golf in the most simple way you could, golf is basically an X and Y axis. It is a front to back game and it is a side to side game. The closer we get from side to side, closer we get to front to back, the closer we get to the hole until eventually we get in the hole. For the long game, short game, putting, applies to the golf swing, it applies to club fittings, whatever you want. If we can get those things closer, we hit better shots. And the more consistent we can do it, the better we are. So having said that, we'll now think about what I just described as the fundamentals. If you have your low point, aka how well you're able to make contact, that's going to be a big influence on your front to back, your distance control. Your face and path. Well, the loft is obviously going to be a big influence on your distance control, but same thing with curvature. Fades tend to go shorter, draws tend to go further because smash factor and spin.
Right.
And then contact, right? If you're mishitting it, it's going to go shorter. Solid contact goes further. And speed control, that's obviously the main elements of distance that we're in control of. The other things we're trying to make more constant the best we can. And then our face, path, and contact are side to side. The face is going to start the ball right or left primarily. I know path can pull it a little bit. Then our path relative to face is our curvature. And then gear effect is also our curvature. So if you can control those things, you control the flight of the ball. And just like Ben Hogan said, the ultimate judge of a golf swing is the flight of the golf ball. And the fundamentals control the flight of the golf ball. So that's what I would define as the fundamentals. Branching off that, then I would say we have adjacent fundamentals. I would say we have 3 categories total. The second category would be adjacent fundamentals, or in other words, the technique of the golf swing. Anatomically, how is our body moving to move the club in different positions throughout space? That's where matchups come in. How are we moving our body? What positions are we hitting to then control our matchup, aka our fundamentals? We move in one direction, it moves our low point somewhere or it moves our face somewhere. We're just trying to get all those variables in alignment so that our fundamentals can match up at the bottom of our swing. The final category I would have would be personal fundamentals. It's something you would feel in your swing that doesn't necessarily translate to other people. For example, David Duval talks about to start his downswing, he feels like he's trying to cast the club. Well, nobody could be less of a caster than David Duval, but that is a feel he has in his golf swing to try and offset what he does, or it feels good, or it makes the swing work. Whatever it is, it's something that's hard to quantify, but if it feels good to you and it's a key that's going to work, well, you on a personal level should do that. So that's how I would classify those things.
Yeah. So there's a certain aspect of individuality that a lot of instructors don't address, and that's one of them, right? So we all have our own little idiosyncrasies, even our
Yes.
feels and our thoughts and even the way we visualize shots completely. You can see
And they're
one,
so real.
and I can see something completely different, and we can execute just as well, right? So
Yes.
it's not like it's not as straightforward as it seems.
Yes.
And
100%.
yeah,
And why I think that stuff is so interesting is because you could look at it and be like, okay, well, if we understand what the fundamentals are, it's like, well, doesn't it ultimately just come back to technique? I mean, as long as we have a good swing model and the right positions to our swing, well, then we're going to have fundamentals. Well, the reason why it's important is because now you don't need to have a swing model. You're open to all of them. And you are actually open to more swing models than have been invented so far because you have a scaffolding to work within. You can work with yourself personally. If you're 5 feet tall and you're 75 years old and you're overweight and you have injuries, well, you're not going to move like a 16-year-old who's 6'5" and hyper flexible. You get to work with what your own anatomy is, what your own feels are, what you feel like you can and can't do. Now it's a little bit more work because you have to understand different models and how they're going to affect the fundamentals. AKA, you have to understand how the anatomy works. Because really, once you understand the tools of how your body can move and how it affects the club through space, you kind of have all the tools to then play with your fundamentals from there. Again, it takes extra work. You can't just rely on somebody saying, "Hey, put your arm in this position," which obviously it'd be nice if it was that simple. But I think it gets closer to what truth is if you can do it that way, because you have just way more options. You could find something that works for you.